the problem, the real problem is not the Palestinian problem. The real problem is the existence of Israeli state. That's the problem. That's what needs all the treaties, all the wars, all the fights in order to confirm that state. And the ones who are keen about that, trust me, it's not the Jews themselves. The ones who are keen about that are the British who created it in the first place, and the United States that inherited the British colonialism in the area. Because they know without the existence of a state called Israeli state, called Israel, this one, they may not be able to mobilize their forces in a split of a second in order to do whatever they want to do.
How important is it that Muslims understand the game, Sheikh, now? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. And welcome to Islamic Oasis Live. Dear brothers and sisters, as we are seeing the last 3-4 weeks, the criminal actions of the Israeli state, the bloodletting and the genocide of our brothers and sisters in Gaza, and the response of the Muslims, and also the Ammatun Nas amongst the Muslims, and we are seeing the response of the governments, the Hukam, and also the desperation of the armies in trying to somehow get out of these chains in order to do what they were supposed to do, to protect the rights of the Muslims and protect the women and children in Gaza and elsewhere for that matter. Today we have Dr. Abu Talha back. He needs no introduction. Many of you have seen him on this show many a times. And we are going to discuss 3 very specific things with him today to clarify certain things from a fiqh point of view, from adillah point of view. Number 1, the issue of two-state solution. Did it ever exist? And if it did exist, is it a solution that the Muslims are allowed to partake in? Is this, first of all, is it allowed from Islamic law? Number 2, did it ever exist in reality on the ground? And number 3, what is the reality of this two-state solution in general? Meaning, what does that actually mean? Number 3, we will discuss Al-Hudaybiyah, a treaty that the Prophet ﷺ made with Quraysh. And many, we see sometimes, some, not all, but some scholars and some activists and others try to use this as a dalil for making treaties with the Yahud, the Israeli state. And they always quote this treaty to say that the Prophet ﷺ did it. So we want to make sure that we understand the realities behind the Al-Hudaybiyah treaty, who can, number 1, do it, and what are the conditions that apply. And fourthly, if we get to that point, if not, this may actually become a series in order to answer a lot of the questions that you may have, and we in general have. The reality of the Muslim armies, what is their role, and who should they move under? Who is it that should move these armies? Especially, you've seen probably in the last few hours, especially in the last 24 hours, the Yemenis, specifically the Houthis, have said that they are going to enter this war, and there may be some type of a announcement tomorrow and Friday by Hezbollah and others. So we need to understand what's going on. And of course, no better person to bring it on than our scholar, teacher, Dr. Abu Talha. Welcome to the show, Dr. Abu Talha. How are you doing? Inshallah khair.
Good. Jazakallahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you, brother, for having this. Of course, the whole millions of shows will not make up for the atrocities that are being committed in Gaza. But we'll try as much as we can, inshallah.
Of course, and this is the time to, it's also awareness is necessary, Sheikhi, and people have to have the knowledge and understanding what to do. People are frustrated, and the other thing is the dangers of people just at this point, they're emotional, but we don't want the people to forget what has taken place 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now. And so we want to constantly be in front of the faces of the Muslim Ummah saying that this is unacceptable now and never. Sheikh, so when we start the discussion, the issue of two-state solution, first of all, did it ever exist? Did Israelis ever wanted this two-state solution? Number one. Is it allowed Islamically? And Islamian, are we allowed to have this type of even discussion that, which talks about two-state solution or basically in many ways giving up Muslim lands? Is this allowed? And is there any reality to it?
Okay, let's begin by mentioning that the whole issue of creating states in the Middle East, in this whole area, has begun only after the collapse of the Khilafah state. So that's a reality. Before, when the Khilafah was intact, and Muslims, at least in the area of the Levant, which is Turkey and the Sham and Egypt and the Middle East, was one continuous or contiguous state. So once that was abolished, the Khilafah, and the colonialism of Britain and France came in, then the avalanche of creating states here and there started taking place. States in Jordan was made a state, in fact, a semi-state, not real a state, called Transjordan. Syria was made a state, then eventually later on Lebanon broke away from Syria and was made a state under the umbrella of France. Then Britain decided to give part of Palestine, or actually all of Palestine, to give it as a homeland for the Jewish people to migrate from Europe, or actually to be evicted out of Europe, not migrate, because Jews never wanted to migrate to Palestine or to the Middle East, never did, never had that in their mind. And in fact, when they were allowed or they were encouraged to migrate, at the end, after this First World War was over, and the mandate of the League of Nations that gave them all the rights to migrate to Palestine, they did not, until the so-called Holocaust, or the crimes against part of the Jews in Germany began, which I spoke last time about, which was it was actually an instigation by the Haganah and the Zionist movement led by Weizmann and Shamir, and actually I think, yes, Shamir was with him, in order to kick out of Germany and Europe, to create a state for them. So initially a state for the Jews in Palestine, which was called Israel in 1948. It was a newly born, it never existed, was never there. Palestinians never had a state of their own before, but that was their land. They were living under the umbrella of the Khilafah state until when the Khilafah collapsed, they came under the mandate and colonialism of Britain. So Britain was ruling Palestine by force, and then they decided to give it up to the Jews, and they did in 1948. In fact, the British, they were the ones who orchestrated all of that, and they made sure that the Arab countries around the Palestine will never be able or will not participate in a war of preventing the rise of a Jewish state in Israel. That was the case. So now, when conflict came to the center of the events in the Middle East, and there were so many wars, the 1948 war, which the Jewish, they called the independence, as if they were the ones who were colonized, independent. And in fact, they say it's independence from the British occupation. But before the British occupation, where were you? You were not even there. So there it was 1948 war. Then there was 1956 war, which was fought against Egypt with the Israelis, French, and British. that was called the Suez Canal War, and then 1967, the war that allowed the Israeli Zionists to control the rest of Palestine in the West Bank, and to control Gaza, which was under the umbrella of Egypt at the time, and to control the Golan Heights, which still continues to be under the control of the Zionists until today, and the West Bank also. Then out of all of this, then all types of mediations and resolutions, the United States came up with this issue: let's make state solutions. Now, that embeds within it the actual recognition by all the Arab and the Muslim countries, recognition of the State of Israel, because the State of Israel, or Zionist state, the occupying state, was never really recognized. People continued, and the governments, under the pressure of their own people, they would not even accept the existence of a state called Israel. It was out of the dictionary of the Arab and the Muslim countries. So now came the issue of, let's have two-state solutions, as if Palestinians, they were in dire need for a state to harm, which is not true. The issue is not a Palestinian state. The issue is the creation of an official state called Israel, which has so many consequences. Many people do not even think about the consequences, because one of the major consequences of the recognition of a state of Israel and the Jewish in Palestine, one of the greatest consequences is that, well, now the Arab countries and the Muslim countries officially recognize there is a state called a State of Israel on the land of Palestine. Then the next legal question, which is pure juristical question, is why the Palestinians were living in that land. On what basis? What gave them the right to do that? Then the Jewish people and the Israeli Zionist country will come back and raise the issue that, look, you were occupying our land. You were living in our lands illegally. This is Israel by your recognition. United Nations recognizes it's Israel. America, Britain, France, Security Council, Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Morocco, all of you guys, you are recognizing this is Israel. It's a state of Israel. Then what the heck were you doing there? Then you have to pay for that. That's one major consequence. That's why this is a very, very dangerous statement. This is very, very dangerous resolution. Palestinians as a people, Jordanians, Arabs, the entire land of a Muslim land is our land. It doesn't matter. Palestinians are not refugees in Jordan. Palestinians are not refugees in Lebanon. Syrians are not refugees in Jordan. This is their land. This is the land that belongs to all. This is what Islam says. And we are Muslims first and Muslims last. We don't care about the Sykes Picot. We don't care about those lines that divided these countries. So when people migrate or come from Iraq or from Syria or Lebanon to Jordan, although they were evicted by force, they are evicted from their land to their land. The eviction is wrong. They have to go back to their homes, to your piece of land. You have a piece of land. You have few acres that you cultivate and you make olives from them. That's your home. That's your home. It doesn't mean this is a country. Those are the borders that you have to be there. But these borders that the United States and the Zionists want to establish firmly by force, by bloodshed, by evicting people by force, like they did in 1948 and 1967, and now 2023, this eviction that's happening, that's totally illegal. It's absolutely haram. You cannot do that. As Muslims will never accept that. The Arab regimes, they did accept it. Arab regimes, Arab countries, without exception. I'm not making any exception. Whether the ones who officially declared, like Jordan and Egypt and United Arab Emirates recently and the Saudis recently, all unanimously, and they have accepted that. They have accepted that back in 1948 when it was established. They have accepted that, and now today, when all the Arab countries in the League of Arab Nations and all the Muslim countries in the Organization of Islamic States declare unanimously with absolute agreement that the war that is taking place should not be expanded to the region, meaning that area, which is called Palestine, it's completely within the mandate and the control of Zionists and fighting the Palestinians. Whoever wins the war or gains control, it's his. Keep us away from that. That we are not concerned. And that statement will say, let's not expand the war to regionally or to the entire region. It implies that all of these states that have called for this type of resolution or status quo, they are in absolute agreement that this is the state of Israel. Now, where are the borders? Are they the borders as of 1948? Or the borders as of 1967? Or as the borders to be 2023?
Yeah. What I was talking about is that this issue of two-state solution came as a trick. The trick is actually to recognize the existence of Israel. This is not for the sake of Palestinians, but they embedded within that, it's a two-state solution. Let's give the Palestinian a state of their own so that at least they will be happy. They don't have to fight because they have a state. Now, they never defined where that state is. But the main idea was to make sure that this entity, which was created by force, illegally, out of nowhere, which they called it Israel, to become reality. That's the whole idea, is to make it reality. It's not for the Palestinians to have a state. It's not for the Palestinians to have a safe haven. It's not for them to enjoy their life. After all, since 1948, Palestinians have been evicted 3 times. In 1948, the Nakba, 1967, the Naksa, 2023, the Great Daipura is by force. They either die or leave. So the Palestinians have been losing blood, losing homes, losing support, losing everything for the last 70 years. But the main issue here is to enable the existence of a state called Israel to be a legal state recognized by the real owners of the people, who are the whole Arabs and the Muslims, to all that's come. Yes, this is Israel. And thank you very much, United States. Thank you, United Nations, for allowing another state called Palestine. Nobody knows where. Nobody has ever defined it. There is a big talk that Palestine is actually Jordan. And today, the historians are looking into the issue that Jordan as a country never existed. And during the mandate of Britain over the area, Jordan was under the same mandate which covered Palestine and Jordan. And the state used to be called the State of Palestine, never called the State of Jordan. And Jordan was later called Transjordan, or the land of transfer. At the beginning, some people, they were calling it transitional, which is either way. Transitional means it's not permanent, or transfer is the place of transfer. So you transfer Palestinians to this land, and this becomes their state. Now, what happened to the people of Gaza? People of Gaza give them some autonomous type of state in Egypt, in Sinai. That was the original goal long time ago, to make them part of the Egyptian greater country in Sinai, where they will have their semi-independent state called autonomous or federation within Egypt, and Palestine will be in Jordan. So that's why today, if things go as planned by the Israelis and the United States from behind them, the eviction of people from Palestine will continue, to include the West Bank people, to evict them to Jordan by force. And the signs of this have already started. Sisi, the president of Egypt, explicitly announced and told King Abdullah of Jordan, look, if the Israelis succeed in pushing the Gaza people into Sinai, then the next will be pushing the West Bank people into Jordan. And I don't think Sisi, he's a political analyst. I don't think he's reading the minds of the Israelis. He's just reading the pieces of text messages coming from Blinken or whoever. That's where he gets his information from.
So hold on. So this is
actually the issue. So that's why I'm saying, look, thinking about two-state solution, one-state solution, three-state solution is absolutely dangerous, absolutely risky. This should not even be on the table, should not be part of the discussion, neither by Hamas, nor by the PLO or the Palestinian Authority, nor by any one of the Arab regimes, or even the Arab or the Muslim people at all. No two-state solution, no single-state solution. The whole Palestine shall come back to its homeland, to its home, to its mother, to the womb of its mother, the mother which is the Khilafah state. It has to come back to the Muslim as a Muslim land. Now, of course, it comes back as a Muslim land, maybe in terrible shape, just like the other states, the other tiny cartoonic states in the area, like Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Jordan, etc. All of these are cartoonic states. Maybe it becomes one like them, but eventually that's where the final solution should be.
Sheikh, before I go to the much deeper in the process, okay, first, if okay, let's say there is one. I mean, they, so what was at least planned as a Palestinian state? It doesn't actually. That was just on paper. I guess what you're saying is that the plan is to push the Palestinians, at least the West Bank, and the rest to Jordan, and then take out Gaza or the people of Gaza into Sinai, and then you have Jordan and whatever that will be considered the Palestinian state, or Jordan, Palestine, I don't know what they'll call it, and then there is a full, complete Israeli state.
Yes.
Okay, and then second,
yes.
If there is a so-called 1967 borders, of course we are not, I mean, it has to come back to Khilafah, we understand that, but if they were to go to with even this solution as the so-called two-state solution, how viable will this state actually be, Sheikh Hani, as far as security and currency and its foreign policy, in anything? Is it just any other, cartoonic state that you describe them as?
It's like any other cartoonic state, except that the conditions for the rise of what's called Palestinian state will be completely dependent from the defense and military perspective on another state. It will not be allowed to have its own army. I think it will not be allowed to have its own currency. Its currency is going to be either Jordanian dinar or the Israeli whatever
shekel,
shekel name, as it is done in the West Bank today. That's what the currency they deal with, either shekel or Jordan dinar. So this country will be, this state will be born crippled, unable to survive on its own. Look at Gaza. The so-called Israelis have left the occupation of Gaza so many years ago. Until today, it does not have its own independent water resources, gas, energy, food resources. It's absolutely dependent on others. Same as other states, which they claim that they do have some resources, but in reality, no. But the idea is not, the problem is not the creation of a Palestinian state or not. That's not the issue. The issue is the creation and the existence of an Israeli state. Look, this does not belong. Sultan Abdul Hamid, he explicitly told them, you don't belong here. This Palestine belongs to all Muslims, to the Muslim Ummah. I remember, brother, when I was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, back in 1991, when the Madrid negotiation took place, the foreign minister of Jordan at the time, he arrived and he gave a lecture. And he was talking about a two-state solution. Then one of the people, brothers, he's an African American. His name was Ayub. May Allah bless him. He passed away a few years ago.
Yeah.
He stood up. He said, look, this land, I am only 15 years old Muslim. I have been a Muslim 15 years. From the time I became a Muslim, Palestine is mine. How in the world you could give it up to the Israelis and say it's your state and I will accept tiny little Palestinian state? I do not give up my right in Palestine. So Palestine is a piece of land that belongs to all Muslims, not only because Al-Aqsa is there. Al-Aqsa actually is good to be there because it's a big symbol. But even without the Aqsa, the entire land is a land of Islam. It has been the land of Islam since Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu landed there. And that's how Islam looks at things. So the Muslim countries,
So the issue is never about Masjid al-Aqsa or Bayt al-Maqdis or
no.
The issue is
that's not the issue.
The Muslims took this land under the Umari Treaty, and now it belongs to the Muslims. And there's a hadith Sahih, Sheikh says that the Prophet ﷺ, that even if once a land was ruled by Islam, even for an inch, giving that up you will receive that land in hellfire. So what is the actual reason for why that Masjid al-Aqsa belongs to the Muslims? Is it just the Bayt al-Maqdis issue or this hadith or the Umari Treaty?
No.
Sheikh?
Masjid al-Aqsa, because it's a big symbol, everybody knows that. And that is, subhanallah, just like Mecca today. If somebody invades Mecca and al-Bayt al-Haram, all Muslims will have a big uproar. Not because of the holiness of the place, but because the holiness of Islam, because it's one of the symbols of Islam that everybody knows. But the idea is not the occupation of the Haram, it's the occupation of a Muslim land. After all, the Haram used to be under the control of Quraysh, the Mushrikeen, for 13 plus 8, 21 years since the Dawah of Islam. So that's not, and the issue of the Muslims marching into Mecca, not because of the Haram, but because this is a land that Allah Azza wa Jal ordered Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this land that you started in, you have to spread Islam and spread the Dawah of Islam for the entire world. Now wherever Islam had reached, that is Islam. And we are not debating history of the Chaldeans, of the Assyrians, of the Nebuchadnezzar, of the Romans. That's history. Nobody ever occupied or controlled or spread over a land simply because historically it belonged to him. Otherwise, how would the Romans explain their existence in Damascus or in Jordan or in Egypt? How? On what historical basis? How the Persians had expanded all the way to Turkey and all the way to the Arabian Peninsula? It's not based on historical. How did the United States and Britain and France, how did it go into Africa until today it's still there? What type of historical reasons? History is not the point of debate. Nations, big nations, small nations, never argue historical rights. And it's an argument that doesn't have an end. And we don't care about the history, who was living in the Anadolu, in Constantinople, before Muhammad Fatih came there. Nobody is willing even to argue that. That's not even, it's out of discussion. It's out of the argument, out of the history. But if the Europeans regain their ultimate power and the Turks lose their ability to fend, they will take Constantinople back. Not based on history, but because they can. Now, the Jewish in Palestine, they are not making a state because it belongs to them historically. Sometimes Musa, peace be upon him, marched through that, or Yaqub was born there. Ibrahim alayhi salam was in Hebron, and they claim. In fact, the Quran, when it debated this issue, it says, "Ma am taquluna inna Ibrahim kana hudan aw nasara." You claim that Ibrahim was Jewish or Christians? That's not the case. These are prophets of Allah Azza wa Jal. They belong to Jannah. They don't belong to Palestine or belong to any of these lands. But the issue here is, ideologically, from the Islamic ideological perspective, we are saying wherever Islam is or has been, that's my Islamic land. And Israel had to exist by the British. See, the British, they created, or they started the creation of a state of Israel in Palestine at the same time when they were helping Mustafa Kemal Ataturk break the backbone of the Khilafah and the unity of this world, the Muslim world, started chopping it. Now, they knew they needed a needle somewhere there to be in the heart of this land, which is the Muslim land, so that it will prevent the reunification of the Muslims. Somehow they've used it. They've used it to the fullest extent until today. So they brought the Jewish people by force, and that's by force and by bloodshed. Sometimes they forget that it was a bloodshed. What's the bloodshed in Germany? It's because the German race was absolutely racist. They did not want the Jews. That's not the point. The point was they needed a reason. All this European so-called the protectors of human rights, they needed a reason to evict the Jews so that they come to Palestine, so that they create a state. And they vowed to give it the ultimate support. And they did. And they surrounded it by all regimes which were created by the same damn British colonialists in order to provide this new entity what is called a safe haven. Don't worry, we will not touch you, we will protect you. Look, the other day I was visiting, or I had a visitor coming from Turkey. He's a professor, and we wanted to visit the site of Yarmouk battle, which is very close to my homeland. And in our way there, I was accompanied by 3 professors from a university and the professor from Istanbul Technical University. We were faced by 3 military checkpoints going down to Yarmouk River, which is a split between Syria, Jordan, and Palestine, which is occupied Palestine, occupied Golan Heights. And those 3 checkpoints, first one, he said, you cannot go, you cannot proceed, it's very dangerous, very risky, there is a war happening in Gaza. Well, okay, the war is in Gaza. What does Yarmouk have to do with that? Well, it's the border of Israel. We passed the first one. We passed the second one with absolute difficulty. The third one, they said, no way, you have to go back. And they were ready to point their guns at us. We said, look, I belong to this, I live here, this is my land. These are my lands, these are my places where we used to cultivate wheat and oat and feed our donkeys and our goats and sheep from here. Said, no, you can't. You cannot. Now, where are you getting your orders from? Actually, I posed this question. Said, look, the first 2 checkpoints, they gave me permission. They probably have gotten a permission from their superiors, but looks like you are getting your orders from a different superior. That must be the other side. He was a little bit angry. He said, no, we are taking it from the same source. I said, yes, the same source which is on the other side. It has to be. Now, look, and I am providing you this visual scene. Now we turned our car and started going back. In our way back, none of these checkpoints stopped us. Coming back from the border close to the Palestinian occupied land, going back into Jordan, No one will stop you. No one will ask you for ID. No one will say, where are you coming from? No one will say, who are you? This could be some people from the other side trying to smuggle something or come and do some terrorist acts in your land. They don't care, because the protection is since 1948, actually since 1917 or 1920, this entity, which they called it Israel, is to be protected by the regime surrounding it. Since 1973, not a single bullet was fired from Syria to the Golan Heights in an attempt to liberate it. And when that revolution started taking place, we have seen planes, cannons, rockets, all types of weapons, killed more than 1 million people from their own people, and evicted more than 5 million people. But not a single bullet was ever fired until today, almost on a daily basis. I live in a place where now when I close with this, I will hear the airplanes, Israeli airplanes, flying over our villages and moving into Damascus and hitting the airdrome there, or going all the way to Latakia and doing all the nonsense. And these guys continue to say, we have the right to respond. Whenever, after we die, all of us, then we will respond. Maybe we will respond when we are all in hellfire. Probably there at the time we'll see, guys, you hit us with your airplanes. They will meet in hellfire, and then they will respond. They keep saying, I reserve the right to respond. And they never did, and they never do. So this is the issue then, brother, to summarize it here, what I'm saying. The problem, the real problem is not the Palestinian problem. The real problem is the existence of Israeli state. That's the problem. That's what needs all the treaties, all the wars, all the fights in order to confirm that state. And the ones who are keen about that, trust me, it's not the Jews themselves. The ones who are keen about that are the British, who created it in the first place, and the United States that inherited the British colonialism in the area. Because they know without the existence of a state called Israeli state, called Israel, this one, they may not be able to mobilize their forces in a split of a second in order to do whatever they want to do. So this is a spearhead for them, so that it has to exist by their force. And they formed the United Nations and the Security Council. Didn't you see the one who just resigned from the United Nations?
I was gonna ask you. I was going to ask you about this. The person who resigned, he was also a human rights lawyer, and he resigned. Supposedly he submitted his paperwork in March, and he was already saying that look, it's very clear that you are giving Israel the diplomatic and the political cover in order for it to continue its genocide. It's very, very clear. And that this was his way of basically saying that, look, I oppose it and I'm not going to be part of this crime. But one thing, I heard his interview this morning, Sheikh, and he was saying something, and which, I mean, he said, because he was on Democracy Now, the show with Amy, I forgot her last name, and she said, there are a lot of citizens, even in the US, who are opposing this. They're going out and standing in front of these, in front of Congress, all these different hearings and saying ceasefire, things like this, stop killing children and all of this. And US continues to provide diplomatic and political cover to these criminals. And then he said something which was even more interesting. He said, people have lost all hope in these institutions. The only thing that seems to be left is that individually people are at the least showing their disgust of what is taking place. And, I may have to do the same thing because I was disgusted with what he was saying. So now the question to you, Sheikh, is that what does that mean to you, that all these institutions have failed, and those who have been part of these institutions for decades are now coming and are saying that these institutions have failed? And even then he mentioned the idea of the International Criminal Courts, saying that this is a joke because none of these, none of the northern countries, so-called, the North and the global North and the global South, he said the global North is never taken accountable for any of the crimes. And we saw that in Iraq, we saw that in so many other places. And now we're seeing it in Israel. And the South, all of the countries, so-called, that belong to the South are taken accountable. So which means that even the ICJ is a game, or is just, to protect the crimes of the North. Now, the question to you, Sheikh, is that what is your, so now what happens? The institutions are failing.
Okay, look. The institutions did not fail. The institutions succeed completely accomplishing their mission. Who failed? The people failed to understand the missions of these institutions. These institutions were made at the height of the victory of the so-called the alliance in the Second World War. So they wanted to build institutions to block the people from arriving at the big monsters. It's a cover, it's a barak. They put it in front of their heads. So now, whoever thought the United Nations was indeed about the sake of nations was wrong, because at the moment when these institutions were created, Israel was created illegally, and then they told the people, "Oh, you have a problem with that? Here is the United Nations. Talk to the United Nations. Probably you will have a solutions. Oh, United Nations, we will have UNRWA for you, United Relief Work Agency. You are refugees, we will give you food. Refugees, we will give you schools. Don't worry about it. We will build schools for you, health places for you. Well, I don't need health coverage from you. I don't need your damn food. I need to go back to my home. Oh, okay, we'll work on that." And they have been working on that for the last 70 years. Similarly, now, every time they want to do, let's say, a ceasefire in Ukraine, they say, "Oh, okay, go to the Security Council." But Security Council has vetoes. So you can do nothing. There is, and then, you go to the public voting. Public voting doesn't have teeth. And then you waste your time with these organizations until you find that they can do nothing, or at least they come and say, "No, you know what? I'm not going to interfere here. Do it yourself." So these organizations, like World Trade Organizations, used to be called the Tarif, in order to hide behind that the stealing of the wealth of nations, we have the Tarif, or the whatever call it, this, the custom-based, eventually called the WTO, the World Trade Organization. Or we have Security Council,
NAFTA,
we have United Nations, or we have the court. Yeah, right. And then we will have the international tribunal for criminal laws. Who has been taken to that criminal court and has been convicted or punished? One of them was the Prime Minister of Serbia, I think, at one point of time for the crimes. Huh?
Was Saddam Hussein taken to court in that court, or was he given?
No. Saddam Hussein, then the president of Sudan, the ex-president of Sudan, was said by the Putin today. Putin today is wanted by the criminal war crimes. Who can bring Putin to be arrested or to be? This is joke. This joke. Let's say, oh, look. The other day, I think I mentioned on the other show, Turkey, which has either the largest or the second largest army in the Muslim world, either before Pakistan or after Pakistan. It has, and it's very close to the border. Then the man comes up and says, "I will take you Israelis to the court." Damn it! What that court would do? It could not even do something to you for the so-called Armenians, the Armenians, which they brought to the court long time ago against Turkey. It's a joke. It is a shield that you hide behind. Big nations.
Before I forget this question here, what you are mentioning.
So just to make sure that these organizations did not fail. The people failed to understand their real mission.
Yes, and now how important?
They know the real.
How important is it, especially at this time? Of course, that Muslims understand the game, Sheikh. Now, I mean, we keep saying that. I understand that, and it's very frustrating actually that the Muslims need to understand. The Muslims need to understand. But Sheikh, in general, people don't have the time to study these things and to understand these things and to intellectually take in all of this and understand the real game and the real infrastructure of how these things are built. But do the Muslims have a choice but to learn this, or do can they ignore this anymore?
Look, the Muslims don't even have to know that. They don't even have to think about that. Muslims have one and only one case. If they solve that case, every other case will be solved. It is just like the Aqidah, like the Iman. I have one case. If I solve that I do have a God who created me, then everything becomes easy. My prayer becomes easy, my zakah becomes easy, my morals becomes easy. Then it follows. It follows. Now, the case that the Muslims have is currently they do not have a representative state. There is no state in the world that represents Muslims. For the Jews, there is a state called Israel. Illegal state, but there is one. For America, there is a state. It's a sloppy one. It's one controlled by the big elites of money, but there is one. There is a state that can defend America, Americanism, American morals, American goals, American money, American wealth, American blah, blah, blah. There is. Muslims, they don't have state. They do have nation states that control Muslims. This is not a Muslim state. Muslims need to solve their case. And once I have my case solved, I have my Islamic state. It exists and it represents me, represents my beliefs, my ideas. Then that state will understand all the politics and deal with it. In America, you live in America. How many people in America care about the tiny little details of politics? Almost zero compared to the 350 million people there. Very few. But they do know there is a state in the White House, good or bad. I agree with them or I disagree. I am with Biden or Trump or whoever comes after. It doesn't matter. But at least the state represents this entity called America. And therefore, I can stand behind it because there is someone who fights on my behalf, who thinks on my behalf. He has an big organization called the Khilafat state with all the infrastructure, all the organization, all the tools, all the systems, that he will understand what is going on in the world and he will have to face it. He will understand the United Nations is fake and it's a shield that protects the big monsters behind it. So he will say, I don't even want to be a part of the United Nations. Let me deal with the enemy directly. I don't want to deal with you, with America or Britain or Russia through the United Nations. After all, it's yours. You have a Security Council, you have a veto, you can stop everything. Forget it. I'm not even going to deal with that. I'm not going to deal with a vow for the food of my own people. If I have poverty, I will solve the poverty. I will be able to solve the poverty issue. I'm not going to accept not a single pound of bread from anyone else because that bread is poisoned. I'm not going to get a poison with the bread for my people. So the Muslim Ummah need to understand that today, if the Muslim Ummah had solved this problem back in 1948 or before 1948 or in 1967 or last year or last month, had they been able to solve this problem, we will not have an issue in Gaza where the people in Gaza today, I mean, look, the man, the president of the Shifa hospital was crying out. He says, people, we gave up on all the Arab and Muslim states. Please, if you have 1 gallon of diesel, solar, please bring it here. Otherwise, we will die. Look, this is an entire Muslim Ummah. Had we solved our case, and there was one who represents the Muslims in Gaza as much as the Muslims in Mecca, as much as the Muslims in Morocco or in Dar al-Bayda, or in Idlib, one that represents all these people, then he will have to bring that diesel or that oil, or will prevent that shortage of oil, or will stop that invasion of the Israelis against them. It's his armies, the armies of Islam and the Muslims. Today, you have how many armies? We have 56 or maybe already 60 armies that belong so-called to the all Muslim countries. None of these armies represent Islam and can work according to Islam. Because if they were working according to Islam, Allah Azza wa Jalla in the Quran clearly said, وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Why don't you go and fight? And then if you are invited, إِذْ ثَاقَلْتُمْ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ أَرَضِيتُمْ بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. He's saying, what is keeping you? Who's handcuffing you? Who is putting those handcuffs on your hands? Who's stopping you? Well, because they don't belong. The armies are good people. These are just like me and you. They are the soldiers all over the Muslim world, from Indonesia all the way to Morocco. But they do not represent our case. So what I'm saying here, which is very, very crucial, all of these organizations that have been created in order to block the regular masses of the people from the big monster who's hiding behind them, who's putting these very smart, brilliant, devil type of thinking at the end of the Second World War. Let's put a shield between us and the rest of the nations, because the rest of the nations, Muslims and non-Muslims alike, are going to find out that they are absolutely deprived of their basic rights. So they are going to run for us. Instead of running for me, for the United States or Britain or France, let them run for United Nations. Let them fight their case there for nothing. So today, the Muslim Ummah has one and only one case. Rebuild, recreate your own state, your Islamic state, your Khilafah, the one that can protect you. The Khilafah ala minhaj al-nubuwah, on the footsteps of prophethood. The one that can take all the resources of the Ummah under one control. That will not allow a single... Look, how many people are calling today the Gulf states and Malaysia and Nigeria stop selling gas and oil to Europe and the United States? Can they do that? Of course not. They will not do it because they want to protect their butts. They are not going to do that. But if this was, all these resources were controlled by someone like Umar radiallahu anhu, or Uthman, or Ali, or Muawiyah, or Harun Rashid, or Al-Mu'tasim, do you think he will allow 1 liter of gas or oil to go and to France or Germany or United States? Not a single drop. I don't need your money. I don't need your dollars. I'm not going to sell for you. Your dollar is fake. You can print trillions of dollars and take my oil. My oil is real. Your dollars is not real.
There's another question I have, Sheikh, is that just so that this is also addressed. In the last 10 years, what we have observed, for instance, when it comes to Syria, we saw that the revolution, which was a pure revolution, was turned into a sectarian a war between the Shia Sunni and between, instead of the people purely trying to remove a regime. We saw that in Libya also, where Libya was divided into two, and then a war almost, the whole reason for the revolution was again curtailed. We saw that in Egypt, we saw that, and now in Palestine, we are seeing the same thing, where the war is being made into between Hamas and Israel. Sheikh, if you can explain, what is this war about? I know you've obviously done that throughout the show, but so the people, the Muslims, it doesn't matter where they are from, that this issue of Aqidah, is this issue of some regional conflict between not even two states, but a state and a group. And, because, before it was the Arabs and the Israelis, and the whole Islamic issue was removed and it was made into the Arab issues. Then now, not even a Palestinian issue, but a Hamas versus Israel issue. So I don't know how much more in details that they will go into. They might say it's Israel, between Israel and the babies of Gaza. I don't know, but can you redefine the real problem, and why is this a problem, before we end this show? Because I know you only have 10 minutes.
Yeah, I have a lecture in 13 minutes. Yes. Look, brother, this breaking the issue into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces started in a very well-defined plan. This plan was, there are people and countries behind it and states. At the beginning, there was a time when it was collective Arabs supported by Muslims, Muslim states, against the creation of a state in Palestine, which is the state of Israel. And then it was turned into the Arab League only. Then the Arab League took a decision back in 1974. Now we know the Arab League, these are presidents and kings and emirs who all have ties to Britain, France, or the United States, or all of them. They took a decision that now from this time on, this is a PLO issue. Palestinian Liberation Organization, headed by Yasser Arafat. And they applauded that and they danced all the way in the streets. Now PLO is in charge. Now after that PLO is no longer in charge. It's the Palestinian so-called authority headed by Abbas alone. And now after that treaties in Oslo that they gave these a fake hope that you will have an entity of your own. So they withdrew from the so-called military confrontation. So it remained in Gaza, and Gaza now, not entire Gaza, because some part of Gaza is PLO, part of it Fatah, part of it different things. Now we have Hamas and Al-Jihad, Saraya al-Quds and Kataib al-Qassam. These are the ones. And eventually it will probably boil down to one rather than two, or half one. So it's breaking down the issue. So now, because now Israel can claim that I'm going into Gaza to finish up with Hamas. It's one specific group, powerful. It has some zeal to fight, the determination at least to stand up. But at the end of the day, the entire world is watching. The whole Muslim world, the 1.8 billion people, look at, let's see what Hamas can do. Are you kidding? You are allowing this group, no matter how strong it is, in front of the entire Western world behind Israel to stand against them. Yes, they can stand today, tomorrow, maybe a month, maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months. But eventually, this is a big issue. It's an issue of an international order committed to keeping the Zionist state in this area, Palestine, no matter who stands against it. So the issue here is for Hamas to stand up alone against the entire world. This is a courage that you cannot even describe it. It's carrying a load that's beyond the ability of their shoulders. It's the load of an entire Ummah. And they know, and we know, that what Israel is doing, and America behind it, and France, and Germany, and Britain, is not because it is those Jewish people are so important to them. No. Because they know that this is the heart of the Muslim land. If Muslims ever can make a big victory here, that means Islam is coming back. There is no other thought about it. So we have to fight it by all means. Now Hamas is fighting the cause of the Ummah, and that is where the Ummah, the Muslim Ummah, the Muslim people who are listening to us today or tomorrow or whenever this show is broadcast, they have to realize, look, this is your case, this is your issue. Now Hamas is the front end. Hamas showed you that it can be done. For the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, for the mercy of Allah to be upon you, for the support of Allah to come to all of us, get back to your senses. Now, what is stopping you? Or stopping us, our regimes? And I will call one more time. Those regimes must go. They must go. Muslim Ummah should not have accepted to live under regimes that do not represent Islam, period. Whether there is a fight with Hamas or there is no fight. They should have thought about that long time ago. Today it's too late. Today it's too late. Today we are almost 9,000 people have been martyred in Gaza. We are losing children, women, blood, men, strong men, fighters, not fighters. We are losing day after day. And this ummah had not worked in order to bring its case in its hand and take its authority back. It's your own authority. It's you. I mean, look, if you people in Palestine, they are fighting with all their with children, with women, with their blood, with their breath, for their simple authority over a piece of a small, tiny little house which has been even destroyed. Now, Ummah, your authority is not Amman or Jerusalem or Cairo. Your authority is the entire this governing structure. You have a big authority. How is it that you are sleeping on it? How is it that you are begging United Nations and others to give us food or to let some medicine to come through the Rafah? Why are you begging? Why all of this? Today in Qatar, there was a big meeting between leaders saying, we demand that this door or this called Ma'bar or the entrance be open so that some pads go to the blood of the children. Man, your authority is way beyond that. The Ummah, we who are not who want to give a piece of bread somewhere, my authority that has been stolen from me is not the land or the kilo of bread, kilogram. My authority is the entire resources of the Ummah. Take it back. Take it with your own hand. Just go march in Cairo, in Amman, in Damascus, in Baghdad, in Morocco, in Algeria, in Tunis. March and take it back. This is your ruling. This is your authority. You don't have to fight or throw stones. Just go and cry, give me back my right. My right is to rule. My right is not to have a job or a work or to have some water or drinks. That's not what I am looking. I need my what belongs to me. What belongs to us is our as-siyada and the authority of Sultan. Sultan is ours. Sultan belongs to the Ummah. This is what the Islam, all the fuqaha of Islam, they understand that. This word Sultan belongs to the Ummah. The sovereignty belongs to Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah is the one and only one sovereign. We take our rules, our laws from Allah Azza wa Jal. He says fight, we will fight. He says don't fight, we don't fight. He says eat, we eat. Don't eat in Ramadan, we don't. It's his sovereignty. Drink alcohol, you drink. You say don't drink it, you don't drink it. You want a woman, get married. The sovereign is Allah Azza wa Jal, the one and only one sovereign. But the authority to implement the sovereignty of Allah on earth belongs to the Ummah, belongs to the Muslims who believe in it, not to the regimes who fight against it. That's the one and only one thing the Muslim Ummah should understand. Everything else is secondary. Everything else is secondary. And without this, you will never, as a Muslim Ummah, be able to solve one of your cases. You will not solve the Iraqi case, which is a big case. And there are big military cases in Iraq.
We have to talk about, when we, at least now, the issues of occupations are becoming, people are realizing there's an awareness that there's an occupation of Palestine, but people have forgotten there's occupation of Iraq, there's occupation of Syria. The whole of Syria. There's occupation of the rest of the Khalij areas by the Americans and others. But I hope and pray, Sheikh, that the people realize that once you allow occupations to take place and they have their roots, look at the type of amount of blood that it takes to and the kind of sacrifices it takes to remove occupations. That may have to be done anyway. I understand that, but at least if the awareness of the Muslims that exist that our lands are occupied, we are living under occupation, at least that's the start of some type of awareness and understanding that the Muslims are completely under colonial entities today. Okay, Sheikh, yani with this, we're going to end this program. We still have three other topics that we need to discuss, inshallah, in detail. What is a treaty and what kind of treaties that we have to, what that means.
Okay.
And also, we have to really define a few other topics that you discussed, institutions and things like this. We'll come back for this. But as always, Dr. Abu Talha, Jazakallah khair for your time.
Inshallah.
And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve you. And we'll be right back. I'm sorry, I know you probably are late to the other lectures. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Yes, I have 3 minutes. I will be on my lecture, yes. Jazakallah khair. Thank you, brothers. And I pray to Allah Azza wa Jal to enable us and enable the Ummah to move forward, to get back whatever we have been deprived of for 100 years. Inshallah.
Ameen. Allahumma ameen. All right, brothers and sisters, inshallah Rabbil Alameen, we will be, it's very important, brothers and sisters, that you share these discussions that we are having. First of all, as you know, it's very rare to have such people of authority who can speak with clear understanding of things. Look, we can't even go, unfortunately, to our local ulama, we don't have, unfortunately, the people with that kind of understanding, that have that kind of political clarity according to Islam and according to the realities of these so-called institutions and the politics of today. So it's very important that you listen to these shows and that you share this with the students of knowledge, with ulama, with Muslims in general, so that we create an understanding and awareness that is so badly needed today, so we come to proper solutions. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
لن يطول الظلام ديننا لن يضام نحن جيل الهمام نحن فينا عمر لا لن يطول الظلام ديننا لن يضام نحن جيل الهمام نحن فينا عمر صبح بدا نور ظهر نجم وشمس وقمر ألقى على الدنيا الدرر هذا عمر كل البرايا تنتظر أيامه البيض الغرر كي تستفيد من العبر هذا عمر لا لن تدوم الجراح بل سيأتي الصباح نحن أهل الكفاح نحن فينا عمر لا لن تدوم الجراح بل سيأتي الصباح نحن أهل الكفاح نحن فينا